Well, I just don't know how to say it, but Russia conducted the most massive attack using the record number of the motorcycles, more than 100 motorcycles per single freaking attack, and lots of the armored vehicles. They've used everything of that not far away from Tarasivka. I would say that this area is somewhere between Pokrovsk and Toretsk. So this map is shared by our guys on the ground. There were 3 of the attack vectors of the Russian army. And you know what? They were just finished. They were not successful elsewhere in those directions. This huge Russian attack just failed. Well, the video is just, I would say, shocking. Seeing all of those motorcycles and armored vehicles just being kaboomed, guys, it's something out of this planet. It looks like, after all, Russia was definitely planning the massive attack on Ukrainian forces from multiple of the directions, but the planning was done poorly for them. They still orient and use the Second World War tactics to attack in a massive convoys with large group of the forces to break through the enemy defense, so Ukrainian defense. But you just cannot do it with the old tactics. What Russia is doing right now, it seems like they intentionally kaput their own army, and I don't have the words to describe that, my friends. Actually, it all started roughly 4 days ago, and you may watch all of my videos. For the last 3 videos, there are reports about the failed Russian attacks. And yes, in some areas Russians managed to get just a little off the ground, but the losses they have, well, it has never been like that before, I would say. Even the last year's offensive operation, then they used the same tactics and they fail with their attacks many of the times. Still, at least they got more ground from Ukraine, but now they waste so many resources and not even moving fast forward. I cannot explain that. And yeah, obviously the situation is great for Ukrainian armed forces. With the minimum losses, Ukrainian army causes absolutely tremendous disaster for the Russian infantry and armored vehicles and motorcycles. And yeah, hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's go. And you know, those Russian attacks are happening not just in the Pokrovsk direction in the eastern side of Ukraine. As promised, Russia started their offensive in Zaporizhia. So for the last couple of days they advanced with their infantry fighting vehicles, with their tanks and infantry forces not far away from Robotyne and also from this area. They expanded this gray zone, but actually all of their forces were kaputed. So this picture just shows the advancement of the Russian army, temporary advancement. Russians went there with several of the armored vehicles and 1 tank. Well, actually there were 2 of the midways. The Hunger tank was used as usual at the head of the convoy. Well, actually there were 2 of the midway strikes. The second one was more devastating for Russians because they decided to use more of the vehicles. And the first loss was obviously the Russian Hunger tank at the very front. And after that they sent the new convoy, so 3 of the vehicles were spotted and this convoy was also annihilated. We have this confirmation, so 1, 2, 3, 4 Russian vehicles at least from what I can see on this screenshot. And yeah, some others were moving there and they were finished by Ukrainian artillery and FPV drones. Well, this attack was not as massive as in Pokrovsk direction, but still the scale of it is more than usual. More vehicles, more tanks, more infantry, Russian generals on their places, and they are in charge of some of the areas of the front lines. They all simultaneously launched their strikes on Ukraine. But from what we see, they're not propelling forward a lot. Guys, if that continues for extensive period of time, Russia would just stay without any battle vehicles and infantry soldiers. And you know, I don't really see the solution for the Russian army. And here, my friends, I want to share my thanks to my Patreon supporters because they do absolutely huge job supporting the progress that I'm doing here on YouTube with all of my daily reviews, with updates about even political topics, because you know, some people, they do not like my ideas and many people unsubscribe also from this channel. But with patrons, I don't really care about that stuff because they keep me running. And you're also very welcome to join my Patreon. The link for my page you may find just in the video description below. Thank you so much for your support. Guys, you already know those stories about Witkoff and how he wants Ukraine to give up its territory of Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk. Plus he also mentioned Crimea, which is kind of interesting because Russia occupied Crimea fully, but he stated about 5 of the regions of Ukraine. So his idea, and it is also the Russian one, is to recognize those territories, including Crimea, as the Russians' original, which as we understand will never happen. And it simply doesn't matter if Zelensky is the president of Ukraine or someone else. Plus, then Putin and Witkoff insist that all of those territories should be Russians. They should have something behind it, for example, mighty Russian army, which is really winning this war. But we see how Russia destroys their forces, propelling few meters ahead. So from the military perspective, there is absolutely no reason for Ukraine to give up its own territories without any fight to Russia. The Russian army shows its weakness and inability to achieve its military goals. Denazification, demilitarization, getting all of those Russian so-called territories under their control is just not possible for Russia. And for this only reason, Putin is using Donald Trump, Witkoff and Trump's delusional team in his own favor. Donald Trump is the only tool which might bring some victories for Russia. Yeah, limited victories, but still. For example, Donald Trump might again cancel the military support for Ukraine and also providing intelligence data. Only that is how Ukraine might get weaker, so Russia might take more ground. That's their only goal, and that's why also United States of America is pushing our other allies, like, why do you support Ukraine, they say. Just to recall the news we obtained yesterday. Right, if we already touched the Donald Trump topic, let me show you this video, because as for me it is very interesting. It shows the attitude of Donald Trump, and he is really honest in his reaction on Ukraine in general and on Zelensky. I'll expedite this video because Donald Trump here is somehow kind of slow. We'll make the speed 1.3.
Because, as you know, Russia's a lot bigger. It's a bigger military force. And if you're smart, you don't go involved and get involved in wars that you can blame the man that was sitting in this seat. Biden, he didn't know what the hell was going on. But I can guarantee you that, and everybody agrees to it, if I were president, that war would have never taken place. I'm not blaming him. But what I am saying is that I wouldn't say he's done the greatest job. Okay? I'm not a big fan. I really am. I'm not a big fan.
So literally almost every day Donald Trump accuses Ukraine and Zelensky and Joe Biden for starting this war. Because, you know, Russia is after all 20 times bigger, as he said yesterday. So how dare you resist against this superpower? But on the front lines, we don't see that superpower of Russia, as they call the second army in the world. Ukraine is capable to resist. And this guy, he doesn't like that. He wants to divide this world among autocracies. He wants to be a dictator himself, or maybe his children, because after all he is almost 80 years old. But here Trump pulled back a little. He said that he doesn't accuse Zelensky, but he's not the big fan. So after all, I guess that there are some of the forces inside the Republican Party that do not like to hear those accusations towards Ukraine and Zelensky and sugarcoating Russia. And about I'm not a big fan, well, I'm not a big fan of Zelensky myself, as well as, I would say, majority of Ukrainians. But not because Zelensky provoked the war, it is total nonsense, and that is what Donald Trump tries to say. But because Ukraine and our military wasn't really ready for the full-scale Russian attack back in 2022. Especially when Russians entered the southern regions of Ukraine, occupying the vast lands, including Mariupol city. And that was definitely a big mistake, and that's why many people are not fans of Zelensky, but nevertheless, we do support Zelensky, especially after all of those Donald Trump's accusations. As I said, I would vote for Zelensky if there are elections in Ukraine. If Putin wants Zelensky to leave, if Donald Trump wants Zelensky to leave, it means that Zelensky does something really good, which is annoying for those two dictators. And that something is the support of the sovereignty of Ukraine. Oh dear, here we go again. The United States opposed the resolution on United Nations cooperation with the Council of Europe, which condemns the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Yeah, here we see the United States of America. They opposed the resolution in the text of which Russia is called as an aggressor state. So here we go. United States is with the company of Sudan, Russian Federation, Niger, Nicaragua, Mali, Democratic Republic of Congo, Eritrea and Belarus. Even China and freaking Iran abstained this resolution, but the United States voted against it. Well, it already happened like 1 or 2 months ago with a similar type of the resolution, and yeah, United States is really now on the dark side. And we see kind of the good encouragement from the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. They call Russia and the United States of America to unite against the big threat in Europe. After 8 years of the victory, there is one more enemy for both of us, they say. And judging on the rhetorics of Donald Trump and especially J.D. Vance, just remember his remarkable speech at the Munich conference, so yeah, at least part of the Donald Trump's team and probably Donald Trump himself are following this Russian agenda. Well, one more thing. Today Donald Trump mentioned that this week we're gonna see the reaction of Russia on the peace deal. Yeah, really the first steps of peace which could be achieved. Okay, so this week, alright, so there should be some of the signals coming from Russia showing that they're definitely interested in peace. Do you see something? Yeah, maybe they tried to show it with today's attack of more than 100 motorcyclists and some of the armored vehicles. Or maybe they showed it yesterday, then they hit the civilian quarter of the Dnipro city with their ballistic missile, unaliving at least 3 of the civilians. Are those the peace steps of Russia? I don't think so. And the Russian representative in the United Nations, Nebeza, said few hours ago before I was filming this video that the peace deal at the present stage between Ukraine and Russia looks unrealistic. Well, probably Donald Trump got his response. But what he might do with it, I would tell you nothing. My prediction that Donald Trump will just continue with his present vector. He will be gentle with Russia and he will push Ukraine and President Zelensky. In a worst-case scenario, he might finish the military support. Even previous packages could be halted and Donald Trump already showed it. And after all, Donald Trump would just forget about Ukraine, forget about what is happening out there and isolate himself from this problem. Just to recall how recently he stated that it's Joe Biden's war, not his. He just appeared there before this huge task, you know. So at first he said like, I finished this war in 24 hours, then he said something about 100 days, 1 year, and now it's Joe Biden's war. All right. And yeah, I've told you about it maybe a couple of the times that I feel like psychiatrist reviewing American politics. It's not about politics, but about the behavior of this particular individual and his team members. So let's check out this short video of Donald Trump and try to understand his personality. Donald Trump, umbrella, airplane. Let's go. Here he goes. He tries to enter the door, but umbrella is too wide, so what he does, he just abandons that. He hadn't even tried to close this umbrella. So this umbrella stayed there, yeah, at the ramp for some period of time, and after it, some of the guy went there and took umbrella inside. And you may say, Dennis, it's just an umbrella. How can you judge a person on this action? I can, because devil hides in those details. He carried this umbrella by the time he needed it, not just to get wet, but later, under different circumstances, umbrella is just abandoned. And he does the same with his own MAGA cult, with his voters, who actually voted for lower prices for groceries, and for stability of the United States economy, and finally for America to be great again. But what we see after Donald Trump became the president of the United States, the value of American companies just goes down and down. And it happens despite the 90-day break period in the tariff implementation against most of the countries in our world, but not against Russia. So absolutely there will be less jobs and United States just continue to lose everything: economy, reputation, military force, because Donald Trump, he doesn't need it. He abandoned everything what he promised before. He is already there in the president's office. He is already there in the airplane. He doesn't need this umbrella, and he doesn't need voters. And my second diagnosis for this patient is that he has a narcissism personality disorder, or maybe he's even a psychopath. He sees himself as a king, and his servants will take care about that usual stuff. It is not his duty. He is above average human. He is superhuman. He is a king of America. Well, luckily for us, for humanity, people in the United States of America, they understand that stuff. So Donald Trump's rating is going down. If there were the presidential elections just right now, Trump would lose those, because his rating fall in the key states is just dramatic. Trump definitely has the biggest disapproval rating from the start of his presidency. If we compare his previous presidency and what is happening now, it's the dramatic fall. Because yes, people see that he's not making America great again. Yeah, obviously this nuclear part of the MAGA cult will continue to support Donald Trump no matter what. Even if somehow Donald Trump gives Alaska to Russia, they would still support Donald, but majority, no, the rating for Trump is going down like a hell. Alright, this is the local decree for the Russian Education Ministry in Sverdlovsk Oblast of Russia, where the local education authorities refer to the Russian Defense Ministry officials plus the deputy of the governor of the oblast, where they say that students who fail their exams should go to the Russian army. Not voluntarily, no, they should be taken to the Russian army. So they have the special order for that: study good, or else you're gonna go to Ukraine and kaput. But who say that Russian elite needs educated people? It's better to control poor people. And if you have knowledge, you'll try to earn more. It is bad. Otherwise, the Russian authorities will not be able to take everyone to the war by paying them millions of rubles. No. So I'm sure that they will put the low marks for the students on purpose, just to cause them to go to the Russian army anyways. And here, you don't really need to pay them rubles, no. And it is one more sign that Russia is not ready for peace. They're intensifying their military action, even recruiting their failed students. Well guys, I'm gonna update you with more news tomorrow. Just stay with me, stay tuned, and don't forget to press your huge like to this video, because by doing so you really help me a lot. So yeah, press your huge like. And I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.